Well, we've rickrolled celebrities, YouTubers, Obama, and even Rick Astley himself. What next could there possibly be, you might ask? For millennia, we have wondered in our own isolation. Are we alone? Within all this time, we've also adopted one sacred idea that seems to transcend all generations, tribes, and cultures. The elemental rickroll. A true call sign for all of humanity. Our universal footprint of existence. And what better way to demonstrate this than by broadcasting it to the whole universe, for it to endlessly travel through the cosmic void, awaiting the first and many humble recipients. My friends, today we're gonna be rickrolling aliens. So, the time has finally come. How exactly do I plan on doing this, you might ask? Well, it's actually quite simple. Yes. All we need is a chalkboard. So, the only sensible way to contact anything that lives outside of our planet, and most likely outside of our solar system as well, is through the use of radio. Radio is transmitted through these tall towers. This way they can go over a large area of land. So it'd be right about there. That will be the main point of broadcast on most traditional radio towers. Naturally, radio towers are not made specifically to transmit signals upwards like that. They're mostly made to transmit signals going linearly like this, all over the surface of the Earth. This way we can broadcast our funny little commercials to all these silly little humans living on the surface. We're gonna draw the surface of the Earth just like that. That's going to be important coming up because it's going to be a big problem when it comes to trying to reach the extraterrestrials. We're obviously trying to rickroll extraterrestrials in this video. Now, it's a simple concept, not as simple as an execution. Regardless of whether or not radio beacons on these towers, there's millions of these across Earth, are meant to transfer information outside of Earth this way, they still do. Radio leaks off of Earth, and it has been since we've been using radio at all. Now, since this travels at the speed of light, and we've been using radio for about 110 something years, technically our radio footprint has already reached hundreds of light years out. You could actually see this on a visual website called Lightyearfm. I'll have that linked in the description so you could just procrastinate a little bit doing that. But that comes to our problem. So we need to be able to transmit the Never Gonna Give You Up song in the form of a signal through radio, because that's the only way that we can contact the aliens. We can't just hit them up on Zoom. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Here's the surface of the Earth. Now let's just say we use one radio tower, just one. All right, now here's a radio tower on Earth. Radio would normally travel around Earth's surface like this. It's not to scale. Now the reason it does that is because there's something blocking it from going this way, and that's called the atmosphere. You breathe it right now. More specifically, the ionosphere. And when we start broadcasting radio, it kind of bounces off and tries to go around because it cannot penetrate this because of the nature of radio. And as a simple demonstration, I could show you right now the way this works using a high-powered laser. We can plainly demonstrate the same concept by just using the light source of the laser itself without any kind of lens to it. And when we try to broadcast it from Earth, in this case, we're gonna have this black cloth right here represent the upper atmosphere, or in this case, the ionosphere. Now let's just say, for the sake of this demonstration, that we're trying to aim this signal to outer space. So here we have all these stars. You know, that's a star apparently. Yeah, you know, just the basic stuff. All right, seems pretty self-explanatory. Well, not really. As we can see, once we start broadcasting, well, it's just gonna bounce straight off the ionosphere and none of it is gonna make it into our area. It's just going to be so dim, you're not going to be able to see any of it. None of the signal is going to make it that far. It's not even going to pass Earth. But when we narrow down the energy, the frequency of the signal into a more smaller place, obviously this is a little bit more exaggerated, we can see that it just pierces straight through that thing like it's no one's business and hits into outer space. Once we get this signal of Never Gonna Give You Up into outer space, well, basically, there's nothing to stop it. So obviously you're wondering, how do we do that in this exact way except with a never gonna give you up radio signal here on Earth's surface? Well, it's actually quite simple. So now that we have a fully erased whiteboard, I could explain that all we're gonna need to change is the amount of radio towers that we're gonna be using. So instead of just one main giant radio tower, which is going to transmit the signal, we're gonna have 3 towers in an area which is going to form one giant radio triangle. Now, we already had an actual radio telescope called Arecibo, which unfortunately completely got wrecked and is no longer a thing. Basically what it was a giant hole in the ground with these ginormous towers on all sides, but then in the center of it, it had a little triangle receiver. This was a very simple setup, but the reason it was set up this way was so it can actually receive radio signals and then bounce them back into outer space very efficiently, and basically be the most strongest radio broadcaster known to Earth. Now, of course, we don't have access to this kind of technology, but we can, in a sense, replicate it, and I'm going to tell you exactly how. Obviously, the first thing we need to do to get started is to rent the actual radio towers themselves. They have an entire website about it. Yeah, you can't really rent a station, you can only just rent a certain portion of a certain radio tower. Some companies actually just own their own radio towers, and instead of just having their own radio stations, they just go ahead and lease the space to most likely companies. I don't think anyone like me has actually offered them money to just straight up rent their tower, but we're going to be doing that 3 times in this exact layout, as you can see on the map. And this one company apparently just owns like hundreds of them in this particular area, forming this ginormous triangle type shape, interconnected with each other over this entire desert, specifically over the desert to avoid the interference that would obviously be there if we try to do this over this giant city, which is just below it. Now, the main radio tower that's going to be making this possible is located on Mount Wilson, the strongest radio towers on the western side of the United States. So this is going to be sending a signal to these 2 other ones about 50 miles away from each other. They're going to be receiving the signal, and then they're going to be bouncing it back to the other ones, and it's basically going to form this feedback loop in this interconnected small network, hopefully strong enough to pierce the upper atmosphere and then travel out and beyond. Now, of course, it's very important to get this right. I'm the one who has to make sure that each tower is running at the exact time, at the exact frequency. These things cost $360 an hour each. We're not going to be taking too much time here. Now, it's a perfect time of year for this, because clearly we can't physically aim the entire Earth in a specific place where I want to shoot this radio signal of Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up. We just waited until this specific time so that the actual area of the sky, which is directly above where the signal is going to be sent out to, is called the Triangulum. And it consists of multiple stars, which are under the name of Triangulum, as predicted. And also, in the exact line of sight of this radio signal, a little bit off to the left, but they might get it anyways, is the entire Triangulum galaxy. So if there's anyone out there, well, you're about to get rickrolled. Now, so it's also very important to make sure that we get the general aspects of this correct as well, as to what we're going to be saying to the ALMAOs. We got to make sure it's at least understandable. That's the main point in rickrolling someone, even if they're not from Earth. Now, interestingly, someone in the 1970s had a similar idea, except not particularly with rickrolling. I don't know why. I mean, that would have been a really great idea. Well, maybe on the account that it didn't exist yet, but still not too much of an excuse. Anyways, they used the Arecibo telescope to transmit a very powerful signal in outer space using its giant dish and 3 towers. Now, the signal, if it was transmitted and received correctly, could be written out as this, kind of like this Tetris looking radio message. The information itself was actually compressed into binary, but it's our best guess at what the most likely language that could be understood by any aliens that can get one of our messages would be. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the Never Gonna Give You Up song, compress it into binary, and then we're also going to put the uncompressed version of the song in the radio message as well. So we're going to literally send Rick Astley into the universe forever, using the same technique as the Arecibo telescope. I think that's kind of dope. If we place this in 23 by 73 pixels in length, which is the non-compressed signal which we're going to be sending, and we arrange it into a perfect 50 by 50, we get the face of Rick Astley based off of this very basic information. If we translate it to numbers itself, well, you get the point. There it is. If you put it through the spectrogram, you're also going to get Rick Astley's face. We're going to be sending all angles of communication here. There's no way that you won't be able to understand this if you are a sentient being that gets this. And then while all this is happening, we're going to have a separate radio station computer set up all the way someplace else that's going to be picking up this signal after we transmit it, and I'm going to have to drive all the way back there just to see what the results are. So yeah, I thought all that was a very nice touch. And that's pretty much all that there is when it comes to the details of this whole setup. With all that being said, let's go rickroll some aliens, boys. So, we're here. Right, so here we are at Mount Wilson, as I said. We have exactly at 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock to get this entire signal sent out into outer space. So the exact moment the clock strikes 4 is the moment that all the other 2 towers located multiple miles away are going to turn online as well. Now the setup is quite simple. Here we have the small transmitter, small brain. It only transmits about 400 milliwatts of energy, probably enough to travel like 1 mile here on Earth and pretty much nowhere in outer space. That's why we're going to be using that one instead. That is the 200-foot tall tower, which is going to send our rickroll signal at about 5,000 watts. Considering we're about 7,000 feet up right now, the tip of that tower is going to be able to reach all of the 2 other towers easily just from where it is right here. As a matter of fact, the specific location on the tower that I have rented out for me is probably that tiny spot right there, $360 an hour. What am I doing with my life? Maybe aliens have their own version of the rickroll and they already sent it to us. How would we even know? So you could plainly tell that the software here is literally just free. So I find it kind of funny how, you know, we could just use free software to transmit a powerful radio signal that would normally cost $2,000 an hour or something like that into the depths of space. Nice. Okay, and time has started. The signal is exactly only 1 minute and 57 seconds long, so there's not going to be too much time to intercept it when it does eventually get intercepted by someone far away. Alright, so this thing is all connected. Literally just have it straight up hooked to this little thing here, and once this gets transmitted on the exact frequency, that's all you gotta do. Within 30 seconds, we're going to make history here. So imagine how far we've come as a race, all up to this moment right here. This is where it all comes down to. All right, the broadcast has started. Okay. Well, we have a successful connection. It's kind of anticlimactic. I mean, you can't really hear radio with your ears. What's good? Okay, if I just happen to start an interstellar war because of this, I'm sorry. All right, so if we just get entirely eliminated as a species because of this, well, just because of Dallas, well, what can I say? This is so crazy to me, I don't know why. It's so, like, nothing's happening, but at the same time, so much is happening. All right, and that's the end of the broadcast. Now all we need to do is just get to that computer set up 90 miles away and see how it turned out, because it's listening in right now. It's gonna be cool. Let's do that. Well, it is now sunset, and I am now at the location of the secondary station, and I'm going to see if it's still there, and if someone didn't just straight out steal the thing, because I just left it here. Alright, and, oh, it is still there. OMG. This has been recording the exact radio frequency that we broadcasted on all day long. It didn't even run out of batteries. There's just so much recorded radio footage, I guess you can say, on this thing right now. Oh my god! I'm just hearing it for the first time. Alright, so it's getting kind of dark, which means we're gonna have to take all of this radio recording and investigate it. Let's go ahead and do that because, well, this is annoying already. Okay, so it's looking like the results are turning out to be pretty good. It just so happened that everything seemed to have worked at least a little bit correctly. The output ended up being 6,600 watts. That's a lot. That's a great decrease from the total of probably like 15,000 or 20,000 watts from all the radio towers combined. But of course, traveling over 50 miles or something in total to get to the place of the receiver, yeah, it's kind of expected. But that also means that 50 miles, the same distance from the ground upwards, is just about the same density of atmosphere all the way to the edge of space. So that pretty much means that by the time the signal reached space, it was still working with about 6,000 watts. So with that amount of power, we can calculate how far the signal is going to go in the future. And that's going to be pretty interesting. By the way, that is about 100 million times more powerful than your microwave when you're heating up your pizza rolls. Considering there's very little stuff in outer space to stop the signal from traveling, it can theoretically just go forever. This signal that we just made is going to be able to be heard from the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, at the strength of what you could normally pick up with your car's radio. At the distance of where we aim the signal in general, which is a group of 80,000 plus stars with an estimated 400,000 planets along with them, but even at that distance, 200 light years away, I'm not even gonna tell you how many numbers and miles that is. If there is any civilization that has the radio technology that we had just 50 years ago, they'll be able to pick it up. And within 10,000 light years, this radio signal will still be able to be heard using a telescope about the size as what was used to capture the photo of the black hole back in 2019. So pretty much as long as an alien species is as advanced as we were in 2019, they're gonna hear the Rickroll. And also another interesting thing to note about that is that considering the signal was sent straight out of the galactic plane, 10,000 light years away means it'll be outside of the galaxy. So we just created an intergalactic Rickroll. We sent Rick Astley into a different, well, not a different, but outside the galaxy. And this is basically the exact same way that the telescope was used to create the black hole image. It wasn't just an actual telescope the size of the Earth, it was multiple telescopes across the Earth acting as one machine, but they were all connected in one network. Kind of like what we did today, except instead the way we did it was by simulating a radio beacon the size of Los Angeles. So that's pretty cool. That is how you send an intergalactic Rickroll. Now even then, after all this signal was nowhere near as powerful as some other signals that have been sent out with the hopes of contacting ET, but it's probably definitely in the top 10. So, ladies and gentlemen, we did it. We Rickrolled them aliens. In 10,000 years. Okay, and with all that, all I can say is have a very great rest of your day, or night, or morning. And I'll see you in the next Out of This World video. Goodbye.